And again, welcome to all of you to our session today on Align Your Church Budgets and Ministry in These Times. I think we're going to start. Scott's going to let me start with a little devotion, so I'm going to get into that right away. So this devotion is more of a conversation. I found a beautiful article, which is called Mission-Based Budgeting, a loving, liberating, life-giving process. And it's actually written by Canon Phyllis Jones, and she's the COO of the Episcopal Diocese of New Jersey. So we're going to hear from her some insights on mission-based budgeting. And she begins this way. Hidden within our budgeting process is a golden opportunity to reach the members of our faith community in ways not possible by any other means. We have an opportunity to connect them, no matter how God has gifted them, and set free all of the collaborative and creative power they embody. Most importantly, we have the power to lift up the ultimate why. Why do we do hospitality? Why outreach? Why everything we do? And how do we help even more pragmatic, business-minded folks connect more deeply with what we do? She goes on to say, few documents get more consistent attention than a budget. And in every instance where that document is reviewed, we have an opportunity to articulate our understanding of God's call to us and to tell stories about our response and to reflect on how we put our money where our heart is. But we need to change the conversation. Conventional budgets focus on expenses. Expenses are costs to acquire materials or services that get used. They are perceived sometimes as a drain on resources. Over and over, our analysis of expenses limits us. Do we have enough resources? How fast are we draining them? Where are we over or under budget? These conversations really focus on scarcity and are generally accompanied by anxiety. They apply, yes, to fiduciary responsibility. I would even say to stewarding our resources, but sometimes there is limited life in them. Instead, Phyllis Jones wants us to think about, as do Scott and I, we want you to think about a mission-based budget. These start from the understanding that costs are investments in God's mission of reconciliation in the world. However we recognize, express, and join with that, it reminds us that we already have a powerful working partner who invested Jesus' life in that mission, one who stands ready to multiply the return on our investment to the mission far beyond any capacity we ourselves have. Consider the parable of the talents and ask, are we burying what God entrusted to us in expenses that merely perpetuate an institution? Or are we looking first to see where God is at work around us, then investing God's gifts in ways that expand and strengthen the kingdom in our communities? Have we multiplied the talents we've been given? What fruit did our investments bear? How do we measure that? How do we reinvest? These are loving, liberating, and life-giving questions that can change the conversation completely. Mission-based budgeting is designed to help us address these kinds of questions. In summary, she goes on to say, our conventional budget format is necessary. It's a starting point, and it allows us to maintain a comfort level needed by many of our folks who want and need to reference specific line item costs. It helps provide assurance that the numbers in our mission can be traced to an important familiar framework. But a mission-based budget, on the other hand, enables the kingdom conversations that help us evaluate our impact as disciples of Jesus Christ. Asking questions: where do we see God moving? How are we following Jesus Christ out into the world? Are we allocating our resources in alignment with our mission? Do we need to adjust? And all of a sudden, our repetitive budget reviews morph from exercises in either boredom or control to powerful tools for cultural and spiritual change. Let us end in a short prayer. Lord, thank you for the future that awaits us, the opportunity, the mission, and the exploration of how we use the resources we have from you. Guide us to new insights today and as we move forward. Amen. Thank you all.
Well, this is interesting, Karen, because it is not moving forward.
Well, I have it up as well as if you'd like. There we go. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Oh, these are interesting times we are in. Okay.
Please, everyone, we just ask for your patience and your grace.
Yes, please, please. It seemed to be fine until yesterday, and kind of yesterday was a Zoom debacle, and I am hoping and praying this will not continue. We want to begin, and first of all, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Scott McKenzie, and I am a partner and senior vice president with Horizon Stewardship, and I've been doing generosity work now for almost 25 years. And I will say that in those 25 years, I used to always say, don't worry, folks, anything that's happening, we've dealt with before. I can't say that anymore because all of a sudden we're in something that none of us have dealt with. But as we think about this whole idea that is really critical, especially now, when you think about it, aligning your budget with ministry opportunities, mission opportunities, I think it's important to have some information ahead of time. And that's kind of where we are as a whole in terms of giving right now, because I think it will give you some insight. One, you don't need me to tell you that the local church has changed, right? The local church has changed dramatically. And folks, anybody who thinks that we're just going to be able to go back to the way it was, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Tony Morgan, who is with the Unstuck Group, and we actually partner with the Unstuck Group. Unstuck Group does some phenomenal work in terms of vision and helping churches get, literally, that's why they call themselves the Unstuck Group, to get them unstuck and moving forward. Tony has said that we are no longer, the local church is no longer going to be a local church that has public worship and then offers online worship. That the local church is really going to become and is an online church that offers public in-person worship. Now, if you just think about that, that's a huge shift that is occurring. And in fact, there are many who would say it has already occurred. And it's not a question of whether or not we're going to allow it, it's whether or not we're going to get on board or in fact get run over by the train. The local church has changed. One of the great things, I don't know if it's, I guess it's not good to say a great thing, but one of the positives of COVID is that local churches are seeing needs and opportunities that they've never seen before. And we find local churches engaging with their communities in ways they've never engaged before. And those become great opportunities for reaching out and touching people with the exact kind of thing that Karen talked about in that beautiful opening devotion on why. And as I've been alluding to, thinking the same is not going to be an option anymore. Folks, there are predictions by several people that are much smarter than I am that over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, 30% of churches will close. 30% of churches will close. And the ones that are most likely to close will be the ones that simply want to, like in the book of Exodus, they want to go back to Egypt. They want to go back to that which was and is familiar. Now, you may be interested in knowing that right now, where we are right now, giving to religion, while many of our churches are doing quite well right now financially, overall, giving to religion is actually at an all-time low. And that's a little bit scary because we've also just come off one of our worst quarters economically as a country. And so there's some significant question about what's going to be happening. So let's take a look. There is a study, it's called Giving USA. Comes out every year, and it's on nonprofit giving in America. And it is the most trusted resource for this particular topic. What's important on this one, I'm going to make it real easy for you. What's real important is that religion in 2019 received 29% of all monies given to nonprofit, to charity. Religion, 29%. You see, that's significantly larger than any other group. Now that sounds like really good news. Well, the problem is, folks, that between 1980 and 84, that number was almost 60%. It was over 55%. So between 1980 and 84, religion received 56% of all gifts. And then you see the number over here, 30.5. And then just this last year in 2019, for the very first time in our history, that number dipped below 30%. That's significant. Now, one of the reasons, it's that number right there. And you all know this, right? You all know this. You all get all 1.327 million pieces of email and emailed, right? Asking for your money. It's one of the reasons why we're experiencing the kind of shortfall we are. And one of the truths is this: nonprofits don't have the automatic buy-in of their members like churches used to. You know, it used to be that churches, you remember, you gave, and there were just no questions asked. Well, nonprofits have had to work. And frankly, they've gotten really good at asking, thanking, and casting vision. They've gotten really good at asking, thanking, and casting vision. And many of our churches have just kind of rested on that appeal to loyalty. And that's part of that reason why you see those trends going down to below 30%, as I said, for the very first time. So now, what about you? Well, let me stop and just ask quickly, are there any quick questions about that information from Giving USA? You can go down to that chat button, or you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a quick question about that. And you will be getting, Karen, they will be getting copies of the slides, correct? Or they actually already have them, I think.
Yes, I already mailed them copies of the slides. Yep.
Karen is always ahead of me. She's great to work with. Okay, what about you? What about your church? One, do you even know as pastor and leaders in your church? Well, here's what we're seeing. We're seeing changes in revenue streams, changes in income streams for the churches that we work with. Income from donors. Some are up, some is down. A lot of it depends on your locale. A lot of it depends on the local economy, depends on the preponderance of jobs, white collar, blue collar, all kinds of things like that. But there is definitely a change in revenue stream from our donors. Many of our churches are experiencing some significant drops in income because of the loss of rental income. I have churches that have been, renting out their sanctuary to other denominations, other churches. Well, those other churches aren't meeting now, and many churches are just foregoing the rent. Other organizations that use buildings, rental income has definitely gone down for many of our churches and created issues. Number three, preschool income. I have churches that are really suffering because their preschool has been closed and has been closed for a while, and they're missing that income. Endowment income has been kind of a mixed bag. There have been times during this time with COVID that endowment income has gone down. In other places, and recently it seems to have gone back up. But it's a change in revenue streams, and we need to be aware of what's happening. One of the positive changes in revenue streams that we're seeing, and I hope you are experiencing this, and that is online giving and subsequent first-time givers. I hope that one of the things you've done is you have strengthened your online giving. I hope you make it simple, easy, and that you, if you're doing online worship or in-person worship now, that you are talking about it every single Sunday. If you're doing online, you should be running the numbers and the websites across that screen, letting people see it. One of the things that we've seen a wonderful opportunity where churches are receiving gifts from literally all over the country. Their family members. I had a person, one of my churches is doing a great work with food a food bank. They actually are doing, actually not a food bank, I'm sorry, they're actually doing 2 meals every week in the church for the community. And they had somebody who had never set foot in the church, never had a history with the church, and they sent the church $1,500 for their meal program. Totally out of the blue. Wouldn't have happened if they didn't have the online giving platform and made it available, and if they hadn't told the story. And
Scott, I think the other important thing to remember that is a really positive trend is that not only is it first-time givers on our online giving, but if we are speaking from the heart and from a discipleship connectedness perspective, then encouraging folks to faithfully do a recurring gift online, we have seen an increase in recurring gifts being also set up for churches than what we had before. And reminding people of that very openly by maybe having someone who set up their recurring just say, I did it because it was easy. And that way I know I always give whether I'm there or not. But I think that's a really positive trend and an important trend to talk about and share stories about.
That's a great point, Karen. And in fact, one of our participating churches, I believe, actually has an offering talk video like that. And am I right, Karen? St. Paul, yes. I believe.
Yep. Yep.
And that's exactly what the person says. They talk about their recurring giving and why it's important to them and why it's important to their church. And recurring giving is one of the easiest ways you can strengthen the giving in your church during times of change, anxiety, and uncertainty. So one of the things to be aware of is, what are the changes? What's happening in the giving patterns and the income streams in your churches? Now, where are you? Part 2, what about changes in expenses? Okay, what about changes in expenses? Well, there are probably changes that are happening with the building, in terms of it not being used as much. And we're finding that, in fact, there are differences. There are differences in programming. Programming expenses have changed. One of the pieces that some churches are thinking about and planning for, others not so much. One change in expense is technology, is realizing that to do online worship and to do it well, it takes an investment in technology. Is that something that you are aware of? Is it something that you're planning for and that you're going to make sure happens? And then another change in expenses for our local churches would be local missions. Okay, we're seeing a very significant increase in a commitment on the part of our local churches to local missions. And that's in our experience, it's very positive, but it's an emphasis that we need to be thinking about and we need to be continually looking for. As you think about this whole idea of aligning budget with mission and opportunity, you need to stand back and say, okay, where are we? Where are we in terms of income? Where are we in terms of our expenses? And then the X factor for many of our churches is the PPP loans, the payroll protection program loans that churches, some have spent, some are sitting on it, forgiveness, all kinds of things like that. That's kind of the X factor. one of the things we're seeing in some of our churches for this fall is we're seeing they're actually in pretty good shape. And part of it's because of the PPP loan. But we need to be aware of that and aware of where we are in this process. Any questions or comments? Karen, anything you want to add?
I think I appreciate what you just said at the end. Is the reason that I'm so excited we're doing this workshop today is I am so impressed and delighted at how hard our congregations have been working to get the message out and are many of them holding their own. But as this continues, we have to work even more faithfully with our folks to remind them that not only giving, but engagement in our congregations, which impacts giving, and also giving impacts engagement. We need to continue to think about how to do that as we do longer and longer of not being necessarily person to person. So
that's exactly right, Karen. What I'd like to do is we are going to now go into our first breakout session. Okay? And what I'd like you to do is discuss where are you? You're going to be, I think these are going to be random assignments. And what we'd like you to do is with one another, talk about your experience during this time since the middle of March. What have you seen happening in terms of giving, in terms of revenue changes in those streams, in terms of expenses? What's been your experience? And Karen, what did we say? How long are we going to give them?
Well, we're going to hopefully have about 4 people in each room. And my hope is that we're going to give you 10 minutes. Right now, the system's not letting me see how much time. So I might have to just come in and let you know in a few minutes because I can give you all messages. All right. So just hang in there with me. But we're going to plan for about 10 to 15 minutes of conversation with about 4 people each.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. So just keep in mind, this is a time. Where are you on your income, expenses? What have you heard today that makes you go, aha, or, oh? Please think about those things. So here we go. Let's try to create these. By the way, you might need to click on accept as you get a little message. You're doing a great job, people. Keep accepting.
Do you want me to join one of the groups, Karen? It came up as.
Sure, if you want to. I don't know which one you're in. Let me just look real quick, okay?
I think I would prefer not to because I think sometimes it takes the focus off of them.
I know I worry about that too, so yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know Stan's right down the road.
Great.
He's
Well,
over the mountain.
I should have said that you didn't need to put me with my brother.
Sorry, Beth.
Okay.
I didn't even notice that. I'll try to catch it next time. Well, welcome back.
It was fine. It was fine. It was just funny that we were in the same group.
Isn't that when it's supposed to be random? Thank you, everyone. Scott and I would love to hear. We've just heard a few people make a comment, but we would love to hear from a couple of groups. What was the conversation? What was insightful, challenging? So somebody just unmute and share.
I'll go first. I was in group 1. A couple of things that came to light was that not everybody is doing the online donation process. So I shared our experience at Holy Communion Lutheran Church in Fallston with PayPal Donate. We were actually ahead of the curve. We put that in place in January of this year before COVID-19, and it really helped us out. The other thing is in regards to streaming the service. You have to be careful with licensing from a music standpoint. What we are doing is we're using CCLI, which includes a streaming license for contemporary music. Traditional music you have to be careful with. That's something completely different. The other thing I wanted to share, I didn't get actually to share this with the first group, but at Holy Communion, we're not only doing the video streaming, video recording and publishing to YouTube, but our pastor also investigated and invested in telephone church. So for our older congregation who are not too tech savvy, they have a phone number they can call and listen to our church service.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and that certainly has been some of the benefit to our congregations who might be using Zoom. Some are Zoom churching, and those folks can call in as well. Is there another group that wants to just share where they're at or what they heard?
Karen, I was struck by how different our three situations are. And it's just a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to any of this. Some of the principles are consistent, but we're all making this up as we go along in our individual contexts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Dave. I think that that's important, but that is why those different voices are good to hear, I think, and to experience. I do want to go just mention from what Larry mentioned, if anyone does not have online giving, feel free to email me. We have some wonderful agreements with both Vanco and Tidely, or there is PayPal, and I would be delighted to help walk through some comparisons or give you some resources. So you've got my email, folks. Just email me and ask.
One thing in our group, we talked about PPP, and I mentioned that my church has had difficulty getting a loan because of our bank. I'm not sure where it is right now, but apparently our bank kept saying they didn't have the funds, and I don't understand how that can happen because this is federal money.
Yeah, Brad, thank you. I was going to address that before I wrapped up. Brad mentioned in the comments that PPP loans are not always available based on the bank a congregation uses. And PPP is still kind of in a, they were supposed to close the opportunity a bit earlier in August. I'm not exactly sure where that's at. But what I do want to share is the ELCA credit union. And you can just look that up online. They are open to working with any congregation who is in need of PPP resources if they have the dollars available or if it's open. So feel free to look into the ELCA credit union. So.
Brad, if you're using, this is Stan, if you're using a big bank, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to use a smaller community-based bank. They're very actively involved and easy to work with. But if you're going to BNC or anybody or BB, whoever, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, and I would just encourage you to use the UW, I mean, not the UW, that's my alumni, the ELCA credit union.
Is it too late to go through them?
I would contact them and see, Brad. They're really making as much available as they can.
Could you send me some information on that by email sometime?
I will. I will. And we're going to keep going now. Scott.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Great discussion. Thank you for that. And I wanted to just highlight the idea that these are all different situations. We're all making it up. That is very, very true. And the cool thing is what we're finding out is that we're finding churches are really, they're much more full of grace and open to change, and that people are pretty flexible right now, at least more so than what they have been in the past. So I think that's good news. What I want to hit on, we talked about what may be construed as some bad news, but what is it that remains true? What are, yes, all things are changing, but what is it that remains true? One is you have a calling as a church. God put you where you are for a purpose and for a reason, to reach and touch people with good news and grace. And no matter who you are, what remains true is there are resources. There are resources. And this is one of my favorites. You have a community and a world that needs what you offer. In other words, you have the answer to a broken world. And boy, when I jump online first thing in the morning, it's probably not the best thing to do, but I do it. I have a cup of coffee and I read some online newspapers. We've got a broken world, don't we? We've got a broken world that needs what we offer as the church. And that's one of the things that remains true, and it is never going to change, folks. Never going to change. Something else that remains true is the unknown of 2021. As we've indicated, many of our churches are feeling a little bit, if they've gotten their PPP loan, some are, hey, we're doing really pretty good. We're in good shape, but they're not necessarily thinking about 2021 and what may or may not happen in 2021. And the final thing that remains true, and Karen always asks me to make sure I lift this up, is the importance and the impact of story on giving. That whether it's COVID, whatever's going on, the number one thing that is going to impact your giving more than anything else is telling your story of changed lives. Every single week. That's the one thing that will make more difference than anything else. So as we think about this whole idea now of, we think about the idea of aligning budget and mission, the very first step after we've evaluated where are we is to evaluate. We've got to evaluate the ministry activity that's happening in our church. And the way we want to do it is we start with vision, ministry, always in relationship to impact. Vision, ministry, and impact. It's taking a look at I've had churches that have actually, they've taken newsprint and they will literally fill up the newsprint with every activity, everything that is going on in the life of their church. And then they begin talking about impact. What's the impact on people's lives of particular ministries and particular activities and programs? You see, we talk about it in terms of impact, but the truth of the matter is this, and I encourage you to do this. Read your newsletters, listen to your announcements. Try and do that with fresh eyes. Because I'll be honest, when I read most newsletters, it's more about busyness than it is about impact. Now, during this time of COVID, is a great time to do a good hard look at what we do, why we do it, and what's the impact on people's lives.
Scott, do you mind? I would just love to share one tiny little bit of the that one other story piece that I had.
Yep.
It will only take a moment.
Yep.
So folks, I just think this is a beautiful analogy. It was another article I found, and it's called Kosi Iafela. And that word is an African word. So let me just share. And this is all about, in the European tradition, we often say the end, as if the story has no life outside of that moment. But in some African storytelling, they say, Kosi Iafela. And that means, here I rest with my story. It's the story that has life. The speaker merely picks it up for a while, holds it, and shapes it for a time. And so let me just do a quick example. This is the way we oftentimes do a story and budget. Once upon a time, a church needed money. The leaders wrote a budget and held a congregational meeting to explain how they would pay the staff, fulfill diocese obligations, support overhead and operations, and fund the current programs. They handed out pledge cards, they made visits and phone calls, they held an in-gathering. Not everyone was super excited, but most people gave at least what they had given last year. And after deferring some maintenance and holding a typical appeal, it all worked out. The end. But instead, what if we use this kind of story? Once, not so long ago, a church stood on the village green. The other buildings wondered, why do you work so hard? You are old, you've earned your place. But the church said, but then I would become an idol. I would take the people's offerings into myself, and they would focus on caring for me. I would rather be a vessel. When people bring glad gifts, my systems are maintained to offer warmth and cool respite in season. My foundation is sure and my roof is tight so that worship and meetings and gatherings and feedings can nurture. My beautiful doors are accessible. My walls know laughter and weeping and the depths of the human heart. So I just ask you to think about, are the stories in your newsletters stories that say the end, or this is, and are just facts? Or are they stories that transform, inspire, and bring joy and laughter and weeping to your folks?
Amen. Amen. So the whole key, and it really is just what that devotion said, it's not about being busy, it's not about doing something. It is about effectiveness and impact, and in the end, it's about change lives. That's our goal. So here are some questions you can ask as you sit down and you begin looking at your activities. And folks, this, I will tell you, this is threatening to people. Okay, this is threatening to people, but it takes courage, but it really needs to be done. Are your activities, one, are they vision-based? Is it based in your vision, your call for your unique ministry in your church?
What if you don't have a vision?
Then we need another webinar. And it will be longer than an hour. If you get to this point, and I'd love to have a church call and say, Scott, we don't have a vision. Then you're 50% there. At least you've owned up to it. If you don't, then I would imagine there is somebody at the Synod level that can help. I know Horizons can help, and I know the Unstuck group. They even have something that is actually online and affordable for smaller churches. There needs to be, and there are some simple things you can do. The story that I like to tell is Frederick Buechner, who is a Presbyterian pastor, theologian, professor, great writer. He was being interviewed by a seminarian, and the seminarian asked Dr. Buechner, said, how do I know what my vocation is? How do I know what I'm called to do? And Frederick Buechner looked at the seminarian and he said, where your greatest passion meets the world's greatest need is your call. And when I read that interview, I thought, that's vision. That's where the passion of the leadership and the congregation, the passion of the leadership and the congregation overlap, intersect the need of their community. That's vision. That's vision. So it's doing those two things. I don't know if that helps, Karen. So, are ministry activities vision-based? Are they meeting internal and external needs? Are they meeting needs of your congregation and of the community? Are lives being changed? And this sometimes is a difficult discussion. Because if lives aren't being changed, what are we doing it for? Is discipleship happening? Are people growing in their faith? Asking those kinds of questions as we evaluate our ministries and our activities. Now, once you do that important work, what's the next step? Well, the next step is making a decision. It's making a decision. Now, what are some possible decision points that you might make as you look at your ministry and activities? One, you might say, hey, full speed ahead. This is fantastic. We have this feeding program, and it is doing an amazing job of meeting people's needs, touching people's lives, and this is absolutely spot on. It might be we need more money and more people for a particular ministry. We might say, this has great possibilities. We need it. We want it. It fits. But there needs to be more money, more people. And a third possibility is to let go, to stop and say, no, this isn't the best thing to do right now. And then, of course, to start something new. Now, what I want to do is some of you would know this better than me. There's an Asian young lady who specializes in declutter. Is it Marie Kondo? Can anybody help me out? Do I have that right? Anybody there?
You got it. We probably should look her up online to be accurate.
Okay. Well, I actually had listened to a video or two of hers, and she actually talks about when you declutter and you let go, that what you really need to be doing is, one, you celebrate. You celebrate what you're going to basically throw away. You celebrate its blessings, what it's done. You express gratitude. And then
You're correct.
Okay, good. And then you say goodbye. That's a great outline for letting go of ministry and activities. Celebrating the past, what's happened, being thankful, celebrate the people who helped, thank the people who have helped, say goodbye. And when you do that, you're then able to begin thinking about starting something new. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to go into our breakout rooms again, and just for 10 minutes. And I'd like you to begin at least talking about what might be one ministry activity or program that you need to strengthen? What might be a ministry activity or program you may need to let go of? And this is just the beginning. We're just having beginning conversations so you can experience a little bit about what this is like. Are we ready, Karen?
Yes, we are. And I know it's only 2 questions, but if you're wanting to remember what they are, just take a quick picture and you'll have them there as you go to your breakout. We're probably going to stay in similar groups so that you can just get into conversations instead of introductions. So here we go. Remember to click accept.
Testimonies of people giving gratitude and then making a very clear ask. And ask for a gratitude offering in honor of friends, a staff member, a ministry, some way your life has been blessed or touched. That video gets shared with every household in worship. You would have a 2 to 3 week message series based around this kind of, around gratitude, generosity, impact, things like that. There is then a letter that goes out / email from the pastor with a self-addressed stamped envelope, and again, specifically asking people to make a gift to the church and make sure you include it as an online giving option. Make sure you include it as an online giving option. Now, let's see. Can we go to the next one, Karen?
Yep, sorry.
Okay. So, asking people to honor, we've already mentioned that, include the offering, a link to the video, link to the giving page, follow-up calls and emails to talk with people, and you can even just ask them to share what they put on their card, what they're thankful for, and then have a gratitude celebration. You can do a word cloud. You can do a gratitude wall where you're posting things. That can be done electronically. It can also be done in person. Can really be fun and dynamic. And then the final piece to mention is just a few thoughts to consider for this. Timing. Now, you may not be able to do this. You may already have things scheduled. We would recommend you launch no later than October 4th, that you complete it by October 31st. Why? Prior to the election. Prior to the election. That you then might consider doing a fall stewardship campaign or generosity campaign in early 2021 or spring. Send out thank you notes to your people that responded, and then track the effectiveness and the results of what you've done. Now, folks, I know that was really quick. If you are interested in doing something like this, please feel free to reach out to Karen or myself, and I'll be happy to meet with you or with a group from your church to talk that through a little bit more. Okay, I know we're out of time, but we think it's going to be a great opportunity to turn something that has been a negative to turn into something very positive, and also a way to avoid that year-end slump that many of our churches are facing. Because one of the truths is we don't know what November and December offerings are going to look like. we may not get the usual significant bump that we get. This may be a way to help do that.
Yeah, I would just like to lift up, keep in mind I sent you that presentation. So you've got those slides to reference. I will send it again. So we will follow up with that so that you've got a few things. And I love that there are those options that we've put in here, but mostly what I want to encourage you all to remember is during October, especially, and around Thanksgiving after the election would be a good time too. Remember that you just want folks to be thinking about gratitude, thinking about impact, thinking about why our church, not just why church, but why your church and why that matters. And I think you could do that pretty beautifully in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And what a great sermon series you could put in there if you talked about why Jesus, why church, and why our church.
Amen. Well said. Well said.
At this point in time, like I said, we will be sending probably tomorrow you'll receive, but certainly no later than the end of the week. I am actually heading out, starting vacation for 2 weeks as of Friday. So if you try to get a hold of me, I will get back to you in the middle of September, but my dear daughter is being married in Minnesota on Saturday, the 5th of September. So we're on our way up to that part of the world. Again, though, please know that Scott and I, even if you just have a little question, feel free to send us a quick email, and we are here to be in church and ministry with you. I will also mention, as I think many of you have heard, but if you would like a guest speaker sometime in the fall or in the new year, especially as you do a special generosity appeal in 2021, I would be delighted to come and either preach online, virtually, or face-to-face on generosity. It's a joy for me to be able to be with you, our people.
Good.
Scott, would you like to wrap up with, I know we went over, forgive us everyone, but it was good to be together. Could you just send us in prayer?
I would love to do that. God, we just pause to give you wonderful and great thanks for your love and mercy that always holds us and sustains us, even when we may not be aware of it. I just pray, God, that your Spirit would now rest and fill the hearts and minds of the people gathered around virtually, that you would bless their churches, that you would fill them with courage, with vision, with gratitude and faith, and that, Lord, they would indeed have an impact on the hearts and lives of the people around them. Bless them. Pour forth your Spirit. And God, we ask a special blessing upon Karen and her daughter and this new wonderful stage of life. Amen.